Grab your beverages and turn up your interweb. Solving the world's problems 12 ounces at a time. It's Dudes and Beer. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to episode 307 of the Dudes and Beer podcast. I'm Chris Jordan, your host, coming to you from the fantabulous Austin, Texas. Not that I don't love Austin, but man, is it getting a little stale. Sure do miss my traveling, sure do miss my shows. Come on, COVID. You need to back down a little bit. Let us get back to a modicum of normalcy. That is one of the things that we'll be talking about in pre-show today. We are reigniting a few things this year with Dudes and Beer in 2021, things like News of the Week. That was one of many things that people over the last year said, like, hey, what happened to that? That was kind of cool whenever you would go over, like, 5-6 news stories at the top of the show before we started. So we're going to start getting into that here in just a second. Also, big, huge announcement. Huge, everybody. The Dudes and Beer app is back. It is back. It is live. Look at that. We're live on that app right now. See that little thing moving around? That is us and this show. It's free. You can go get it. It is not on platforms yet. I want you all to know, especially iPhone users. Sorry, Orchard dwellers. It may be a hot minute or two. I've got the source code, things like that, but y'all know how I feel about Apple. Unfortunately, it is about 30% of the app marketplace. Most of our listeners do not come off of iTunes, stuff like that. So I prioritize things for Android. If you're an Android user, stop right on by the Dudes and Beer podcast webpage today. You can check it out. It is right there in our widgets side. You can see the Dudes and Beer app. Click on it, and you will see this groovy download link. Do that from your mobile device. That APK will download to your phone or to your tablet. Hit install. Tell it yes. It installs. You have everything. I'm here to tell you, we got chat functions back. We have private chat rooms. We have guest rooms where you can ask questions for the guests live. We've got the website on there. We've got the RSS feed. We've got the live function. There's even a tip calculator. So if you're out and about in this COVID day and age, having a drink, having a bite to eat with your family, friends, loved ones, business associates, what have you, whip out your Dudes and Beer app. Make sure that tip is right, folks, and always make sure to tip 20%. Let's be real. Come on. Now, like I said, tonight, so excited to be bringing back many things, not just the Dudes and Beer app, but as well Dudes and Beer news of the week. Let's hop on over to the Facebook stream and see what we've got, folks. We have all kinds of fun stuff. There was a cool article that came out today about scientists finding male praying mantises taking a stand against cannibal females. Go male mantids. Of course, SpaceX made a huge launch today. First time that they've had two rockets on the platform. And unfortunately, one of them had a horrible, horrible launch. In addition, Jeff Bezos announces in Q3 that he will be stepping down as Amazon CEO to be replaced by Andy Jassy. That is huge information in the world of tech, business, things like that. I think a lot of that may have to do with recent politics, all that kind of stuff. Maybe even a little bit of the blowback about the Amazon servers and Parler. We'll see. But in addition, another major announcement was that the new Pentagon head that came in, the new acting head of defense, came in and cleared out every one of the Trump advisory appointees to the Pentagon. Citing concerns. And this is my favorite one right here. The recent Myanmar coup. This nice lady got photobombed by a coup of a government, folks. And you cannot make this stuff up. The instructor is King Hin Wai out of Myanmar. She is a PE teacher, and absolutely wild stuff to know that while she was recording her typical routine in the morning, like, hey, everybody, let's get up. Let's get moving. There she goes right there with, yep. Yeah, there's the military parade rolling in while she's doing her exercise. Now, granted, this is where she shoots all the time. Hey, she's just doing her thing. But there is an active military coup rolling down the road to go take over the government in the background of her video. So, congratulations to you, King Hin-Wai, for the photo bomb of the century, man. Like, look at that. You can see the troops, like, leaving their mobile units to go in. It's one of those, like, you cannot make that up. Absolutely amazing. So, yeah, way to go, Miss Y. I am actively trying to find her on sources of social media to have her on for a segment, because that's just one of those, like you were selling peanuts when Ferdinand Marcos was taken over, you know, like things like that. Just wild stories of where were you when. This woman has been all over major news all day long. So congratulations. Like, you just got great coverage for your PE stuff. Good for you, Teach. And let's see, that pretty much wraps it for the news of the week. One of the big things that came out over the last week or so, there of course, as we know, new strains of COVID that have popped up. And that is one of those that we talked about with John Hall before things really started going awry. And this was back a year ago. This was back like last January when all this stuff first started happening, and we found out that this was a coronavirus. Dr. John Hall and I, of course, he was my first source because he's a doctor and also a respiratory doctor. So one of those like, hey, let's have you on. Let's start talking about the science behind this. And the one thing that we kept saying over and over, and that we've been saying, is that don't forget, it's a coronavirus. It may give you symptoms like the flu. It may make you feel like the flu. But it's not the flu. It's much closer to the common cold than it is the flu. And with the common cold comes things like mutations. And that's what we kept saying, is get ready, especially once this is in the population, once this gets to a larger population, get ready to start seeing mutations on the regular, the same way that we see with the common cold, which will make it very hard for full-on vaccination. Here is that clip from episode 258, one of the many Dudes and Beer called it moments over the last year or so. Let's check that out. With the concept of it being similar to the common cold and also being a flu, these are things that mutate regularly. And I think that's really a lot of the concern right now is the mutation factor. And, you know, by the time that we do begin to come up with some kind of vaccine, it will have mutated already.
Well, and you got to remember, too, that I think they've pretty well narrowed it down that it is a bat virus. And, you know, there's another really horrible virus called Hendrovirus that comes from the bats, too.
Yeah.
That they've been working with in BLS-4 laboratories. But there were no bats being sold at the Wuhan market, the wet market. But they were experimenting on bats at the Wuhan Virology Lab. So not that it was weaponized, but it may have been an accidental release from there, because it had to get from the animal host to a human host. And the first death was someone who hadn't been to the Wuhan market. But you have to have as close as you can to the initial, you know, virus DNA component that initially affected humans, because, as you said, it can mutate. It mutates when it goes to an animal host or a human host, and it can mutate again as it goes from human to human host. So far, they're saying that they think the mutations have stabilized, but like we said, what the mutation you see in Italy may be different from what you see in this country. It may be different mutations in between cultural groups, or ethnic groups. So that's the thing to watch out. Viruses are pretty smart little devils. Viruses and prions.
Oh God, yeah.
Really about the smallest thing we have that can be considered.
And there you have it, exactly as the doctor said. Different ethnic backgrounds, different countries, things like that. That's what we have to keep an eye out for, and that is quite literally what we have been up against over the last year. I just looked it up while that was going on because I don't have the published dates public on the website, but going through the background in the control panel, I saw February 25th of 2020 that episode was released. So just right up at a year ago, we were having this conversation about this exact situation, about numerous mutations happening per country, mutations happening across cultural lines, things like that. So, Dr. John Hall, I want to thank you for, A, the amazing information that you always bring to this show, B, for just being a friend and always being there and always listening and always sharing the show. Like, he shared this show tonight, like, with his friends. It was one of those, like, I love seeing that. I love seeing when our guests become audience, when our guests become friends of the show, and when it just becomes a cooperative effort to bring this kind of knowledge to the people. That's why I have doctors on. That's why I have lawyers on. That's why I do not have episodes about conspiratorial content without going to somebody who has written about said content. Because we'd much rather hear facts here than opinions, than hearsay conjecture. We're about more than that here. We're also about the amazingness of Groundhog Day. Just got to give shout out to the prognosticator of prognosticators. As a UD student, University of Dallas, that is. Groundhog Day is a holy and hallowed day for students of University of Dallas. So all of you up there that are out in the woods, are out kegging it up with your Groundhog T-shirts, be safe, guys. Take the bus that's provided. Be safe. Drink water. Even though it's cold outside, you can still get dehydrated. Take care of yourself. And for God's sake, show up to class. Don't be like me. I had the great opportunity in 2005, whenever I moved to Maine, to make a trip to the hallowed grounds of Gobbler's Knob and Punxsutawney. And I'm here to tell you, as a Cajun, that one night of decadence in Punxsutawney, and bars being open all night, and people being able to take six-packs from bars to bar, it rivals Cajun Mardi Gras. And that's not New Orleans Mardi Gras. That's like traditional Cajun Mardi Gras. The pomp, the circumstance, the beauty of it, the culture behind it, and the fact of a community coming together. Like, literally, the prognostication of Phil the Groundhog, the prognosticator of prognosticators, means nothing, folks. He told us this year that we have 6 more weeks of winter. He could have told us that we had 6 weeks until spring. That basically means 6 more weeks of cold winter. What it is an opportunity for a community to come together, despite differences, despite issues in the community, and celebrate one thing and come together for one reason. That's the beautiful part of it. And speaking of community coming together, I have to thank 2 very, very special people this evening. And they are guests of this show as well as friends of this show. That is Sev Talk, author of You Have the Right to Talk to Aliens. She is on this show regularly. We love Sev. Her energy is fantastic. We love her stories. We need to have her on to talk about MUFON field investigations, things like that. But her, as well as our previous guest and good friend, Aaron Montgomery, author of Dirty Little Secret. another UFO experiencer. We have both of these folks to thank for our direct connection to our guest this evening. That is Terry Lovelace, the author of Incident at Devil's Den and the new book, Incident at Devil's Den, by the way, bestseller on Amazon, as well as I think another list, if I'm not mistaken. But the new book is just out, Devil's Den, The Reckoning. These books are, of course, available on the Dudes and Beer store. If you have not been over there, make sure to stop on by. We have fantastic stuff there. All kinds of books from all of our guests. Everybody, L.A. Marzulli, even all the way down, if you enjoyed the stuff with Mark Kistler last week, talking about the importance of art for children and his work on Secret City with PBS and his recent work with NASA. His books are on there. Everything, as well as paranormal equipment, all kinds of good stuff. dudesandbeer.com/store is the website. Our guest this evening is the amazing, the indomitable, the Esquire, Terry Lovelace. How are you today, sir?
I couldn't be better, thank you. And thank you for the nice intro.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, I don't know if you saw the post that I made on Facebook. What's funny is that I made the post on Facebook, and then I could not find the post anywhere. But my exact quote was that I had been hunting you like a bull stag over the last 2 years, carefully stalking, because I know that especially authors, people that are making the circuit, people that are on shows, the ilk of Coast to Coast AM, Dreamland with Whitley Strieber, John B. Wells' Caravan to Midnight, things like that. Like, they're busy people, man. They are out making the circuit between speaking, between conventions, appointments on radio shows like that, and it can be tough to weed things out and to respond to everybody. And though I'd reached out, I didn't take it personally when you didn't contact me back, because I know all these things. You're literally in the middle of the fray of promotion, and putting things out and getting your story out there. And when Seb said, "Oh yeah, I know Terry, we talk all the time, I can connect y'all," it was like, no way. And then you literally called me.
I love it.
And that blew my mind, man. I was like, wow, oh my God. Like I said, I'm so happy to have you on the show. Your book, Incident at Devil's Den, was one of those, when it came out a couple years ago, really, really had, I think, a quaking presence in the world of paranormal, in the world of UFO. It really did shake a couple things. And I love the book. I'm about a third of the way through Reckoning right now. And your writing style is fantastic. It is very easy to read, and it sounds like a familiar friend telling you a story over a beer, which is what I love. But I think before we get into your infamous incident at Devil's Den, folks, by the way, would be Devil's Den State Park in Arkansas. And we'll be getting into that. But I think beforehand, like I said in our pre-show conversation, Terry, I think it behooves us to let the audience know a little bit about your bona fides, about who you are, who you were before this incident, as well as after this incident professionally, because there's an Esquire on your name, and you don't just get Esquire because you're in some cool band like Wild Stallions and Bill and Ted, folks. You get Esquire behind your name because you're a lawyer. And as I said before the show, Terry, like much like whenever you have a UFO witness that is a pilot, you take their word a little bit different because they are a trained observer, because of their thousands of hours of flight time that it took to obtain the licenses that it took to fly an airliner or a jetliner or a jet fighter, what have you. And you, in the same right, with the Esquire behind your name, have the thousands of hours of research, taking witness statements, being able to remember fine detail about gross situation, as well as that onus that is there on a lawyer to be truthful no matter what. And even if it comes to the fact of you have a moral quandary in the case, that means you have to exclude yourself. So
exactly. I take those laws, those rules of ethics very seriously.
Well, precisely. And I think that's really important to kind of get into and lay the groundwork of before we really get into your experience. Because, you know, I've had my own experiences, and of course, some people know my extracurriculars in life, and they're like, hey, wait, Chris, were you high? Well, yeah, but I mean, you know, come on now. So it is one of those, knowing that there is a lawyer who is a witness gives you a different level of credence. So let's go ahead real quick and familiarize our audience with Terry Lovelace, who he is, and how you came to this incident at Devil's Den.
Oh, sure. I can give you the capsule version in a few minutes flat. You know, my life has not been all that exciting. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. I joined the Air Force right out of high school in 1973, and I spent the next 6 years on active duty in Missouri near a little town called Knobnoster. It's still there. At Whiteman Air Force Base, which is still there. It's now home to the B-2 bombers. But back when I was there from 73 to 79, it was a SAC base, still a nuke base with B-52s and the Minutemen II ICBM missiles spread out all over the countryside. But yeah, so I was a medic and an EMT, a first responder, worked in the emergency room there, worked with for 3 years with a friend, Toby or Tobias. And we made a great pair. I mean, we worked together, we socialized together. He was a great guy. And we got along beautifully. We worked the night shift, so not many officers around. It was, you know, if you have to serve 6 years to get the GI Bill, to get a college education, this was the way to do it. Yeah. I mean, we weren't fighter pilots or anything, but, you know, we weren't chained to a file cabinet either. So one night, 1977, my buddy walks up to me and says, "Hey, man, I got an idea. Let's go camping." So that was the genesis of my 1977 experience. But before I go there, let me finish. I ended my enlistment in 1979. I finished my undergraduate, a degree in psychology, and went to Western Michigan for law school. In private practice for a few years, and then became a civil servant as an assistant attorney general for the U.S. territory of American Samoa, which is the only U.S. territory south of the equator.
Yeah.
It's about on the same latitude as New Zealand. It's 14 degrees off the equator. Or make a left at Honolulu and go 2,500 miles south.
Yeah, go land crabs.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful place with beautiful people. And I was a prosecutor there, and felony prosecutor, and that was fun. I enjoyed that, and that was service to the people. And the people there, like I said, are the best in the world.
Yeah.
After that, I went to work for the state of Vermont, doing the same job. Well, no, not doing the same job. I was an assistant attorney general, but I worked on their board of medical practice, doing medical regulatory stuff instead of prosecuting bad guys. So retired from there in 2012 and my wife and I moved to Dallas, Texas, where our adult children and grandchildren are. So here we are.
Well, and yeehaw, you got here as fast as you could.
I did. And, you know, this whole story really starts with an X-ray in 2012 that is in the back of the book. And on my website, if you go to terrylovelace.com, I got a routine X-ray because I had a problem with my knee, and they found 2 foreign objects in my knee. And, you know, something about seeing that X-ray just it drove home that in 1977, when we had this event, that these things had put their hands on me, whatever they are.
Wow.
And, that was hard for me to process. That really was. And I think I never intended to write a book or speak publicly about this event. We never even told our children, they found out in 2017. But, it was a good thing to do. I'm glad I did it. It was very cathartic and cost me a few friends in the legal community. But you know what? There's a UFO culture in this country.
There is.
It's way bigger than I thought. A UFO community of people like Sev and Aaron Montgomery and just beautiful people. And, the reward from that's been well worth anything I may have lost. So
that's always great to hear whenever that's because it's hard. It's hard to come forward with something like this. Like a lot of the reason I'll be honest, folks, like I approached a professor a week ago to be on the show to talk about a topic and heard back from him, and he was like, I don't think that my take will be up your audience's alley. And I sent him an email back, and I was like, I understand your reticence. We talk about a lot of odd topics. We talk about a lot of paranormal. We talk a lot about, certain topics like UFOs, things like that. I feel that there is a certain truth that needs to be told in the world. However, we also have on professors, doctors, all kinds of stuff to talk about their research and to talk about demystifying people's possible misunderstandings and what the science behind things actually is. So, same thing here, and it's one of those that I think it's important to note that a lot of people keep their stories to themselves because of fear of reciprocity like that, Terry, because of fear of losing friends, losing family, losing jobs, losing careers.
Absolutely.
And like you said, you lost friends in the legal community. Friends in the legal community are like you may as well have gone through war with somebody. It doesn't matter if you're prosecutor and defense attorney. You're still friends because you've been in the trenches together.
Sure. Fight each other tooth and nail in the courtroom, but afterward, let's go to lunch. I mean,
let's go have a glass of scotch and talk about that.
Absolutely.
Because I mean, it's your job, and that's just it. And to know that someone like you waited as long as they did to tell their story. I mean, you didn't find things out until 2012 to begin with, and let's kind of start back tracing that a little bit, Terry, from your experience in 2012 and finding these, I guess implants might be the only way to say it, inside of you through X-ray. What brought you to the point of Devil's Den? What was it for you that drew the correlation between those two things?
Well, Devil's Den was a really strange experience in and of itself. I mean, I had never been camping in my life. And my friend Toby, who was from Flint, Michigan, he had never been camping in his life. So I looking back on this thing, it was just, a comedy of errors. And I had a guy who traced out, the Devil's Den place where we stayed is a plateau. We didn't stay in a campground. We trespassed and went into an area where we weren't supposed to be, obviously. But it was this plateau that's roughly triangular shaped, and with the grass cut on top, and it's high enough that you're level with the tops of the trees. So unless you're right up on it, you can't see it. And it was kind of weird. My friend, who did have an excellent sense of direction, but he called every correct turn for us to make the 8-mile trip from the kiosk where we entered the park to this plateau. And the road had, probably 20 different turns and offshoots. And the odds of him doing that are just against us. I mean, it's just incredible that he navigated us there. So, in a way, it kind of felt like we were keeping an appointment. I know that sounds odd, but it was a strange thing. Yeah, here is this place where we stayed, and they clear-cut this plateau. You really can't see the elevation very well on that shot, but sure. You can see tractor tires. You can on tractor. So that's still owned by the Bureau of Land Management. It's federal land. So somebody in the U.S. government has decided to spend money and burn money and gas for 50 years to cut the grass and keep trees off the top of this. I mean, that plateau should be covered with 40-year-old mature trees by now. And somebody keeps it clear cut. I posted a picture of that Google Earth image on my Facebook page. And I have a friend who's a landscaper down in Alabama who looked at it and said, yeah, he could tell that it was cut with a thing called a brush hog that you pull behind a farm tractor.
Yeah.
So, I wonder why the U.S. government feels the need to keep that cut. That's just weird.
Well, and with that being said, and the fact that, like you said, y'all had to work your way to get to that spot, and for some reason it's clear cut, for some reason it's open. Let's start getting into your experience that night in 1977 with Toby.
Yeah, that's really the whole heart of the issue. It really is. We had, again, we'd never been camping before, but it ain't rocket science. It's you set up a tent, you blow up some air mattresses, you start a campfire.
Man, and you were glamping. You had air mattresses.
Yeah, we were. We were doing it right, and it was. It was fun. We did. We went and had a lot of fun. Had a nice hike. Burned hot dogs over a roaring brush fire, and we did some fun stuff. And toward the evening, we're just kicked back on these air mattresses with the campfire in between us, and it's about 9:00 p.m. But we've been working the night shift for 3 years, so 9:00 p.m. is like mid-afternoon or something, or morning even. It's not, and we had every right to maybe be tired, fatigued from the drive, but we had no right to be sleepy. But I'll get into that in a second. What happened was we were having a conversation, and there came a lull in our conversation, and I noticed that we'd had a nice breeze just a few minutes before, and it was gone. And then I noticed the quiet. And, this sounds cliche. This sounds like, a movie or something. But I swear to God, I've talked to people who've had experiences that tell me they've had the same thing happen to them. And that was the crickets, the tree frogs, all the things in the forest that make noise. Those all fell silent. I mean, it was dead quiet. I mean, it's like being in a sound booth. And it unnerved me. I mean, if I'd been there by myself, I'd have been out of there. But my friend kind of blew it off. He's like, yeah, man, look, we've been laughing and cutting up. You know what? They'll be back. The crickets, the tree frogs, all that stuff, they'll come back. Just wait and see. And I'm like, all right. And, we exchanged some more casual conversation. And then he's got his head turned to his left, towards the west, and he's looking at something. And he asked me, he says, hey, Terry, were those lights there before? And I mean, there were no lights visible. There was maybe a little bit of glow on the horizon from the campsite a couple miles away, the regular campground, but there was nothing out there, especially back then. And I stood up to see away, and on the western horizon, there was this group of 3 little stars in a tight triangle that sat just above the horizon. And, they were too far up to have been lights from a train or a, parking lot or something. But they were static. They were dead still. And that didn't make sense. I mean, it couldn't have been an airplane. And we thought, well, maybe it's an airplane and it's flying right at us, so we won't actually perceive it moving until it varies its course by a degree or two.
Sure, because you're up on a plateau.
Yeah. So, but that never happened. And while we're watching it, we're discussing it, these three lights rotated like they were on an axis, and they just turned. And when they turned, they aligned themselves to the base of the triangle was parallel with the horizon, with the apex pointing up. Yeah, in this image, if you look in the lower left corner there, you can see my drawing of a car and two little guys, and that's supposed to be a tent.
Yeah, I love that.
I tried to draw that to perspective. This thing that we saw was a city block long on each side. It was absolutely enormous. Wow. It was like a Walmart, hanging in the air over us. But it took a little while to get there. What it did, these three lights went up and it hit what I called was a ceiling, and it kind of leveled out and then pointed with the apex pointed right at us and started like a glide down. And as it flew, it did the somersault-like thing where it would do rolls and turn over, and you'd see the one light go underneath and then the two lights come around, and it was interesting to watch. And I don't know where it came from, but I had this feeling that, hey, this thing's not out of control. It's moving with purpose. Whatever that purpose is. Maybe that was its way of demonstrating, this thing's under our control. I don't know. I think we were under its influence, certainly.
And how do you mean by under its influence, Terry?
Well, what happened was, our emotions, our reaction to this was muted. Normally you would pretty much flip out, and we didn't.
One would think so, and I think that that is a fair point to bring up. Despite who it is, I think when situations like this happen, a moment of shock and awe quite literally just takes over the body.
Well, you know what this was? This was weird. I had this feeling of calm and a mild sense of disinterest. I wouldn't go as far as to say I was apathetic, but
disinterest. Wow.
Yeah, a mild disinterest. I felt more like I was observing than I was participating in the event. It was a strange place, and my buddy must have been there too, because there's hardly a word spoken between us while this is going on. But all that fear and uneasiness that I felt earlier when the crickets and the tree frogs fell silent, that was all gone. I was more than fine. I was relaxed. I would almost say I was semi-sedated.
Wow.
And we sat there and just watched this thing. And it was quite a sight because it leveled off at about 5,000 feet and headed right for us. No panic, just watching. And we could see there were a trillion stars out that night, so the starlight was bright. And the sky was blue, and the area between this triangle and these points, the lights on each point of the triangle, the area inside where the body of the ship was black against the horizon, against the sky. And it cast a big triangular shadow in the starlight as it glided over the trees, the treetops. And it came to a stop at about 3,000 feet over our heads. And I don't think either one of us said a word. And we just sat there in a silence. And as soon as it stopped, almost immediately, a light shot out from underneath this thing in dead center. And it was a column of visible white light. I mean, the same effect you get with a high-power searchlight cutting through fog, only about 6 inches in diameter.
Wow.
And it square in the middle of the campfire, and stayed there for maybe 60 seconds, and then it, was off like someone hit a switch. And then
when that light was on, did you feel anything? Or
no. The only thing that we felt was waves of sedation, waves of calm, and it was kind of kind of a pleasant feeling. It was very similar. I had some surgery once, and it was very similar to what they gave me pre-anesthesia, to kind of put me at ease.
Yeah.
And, so it was like that. And this light, like I say, it only hit the campfire for some reason, stayed on for a minute, clicked off. But then immediately, in its stead, there came this, and I'd only seen lasers on television. This is 1977. I'd never seen one in real life.
Yeah.
There was a laser that shot down. It was about the diameter of a pencil, and it was a weird color, like a blue-violet color, and it landed in our campsite, and it would stay in one spot for a tenth of a second and then reappear in another spot and then another and another. So it gave the illusion it was dancing all over the campsite. And I had the thought, this thing's scanning us. I mean, it's checking us out. And I believe that's what it was doing.
Yeah, or either that or trying to get you to play.
Yeah.
Treating you like an intergalactic cat.
Well, you know what? And that's really a point that I glossed over, but it's probably important in the details. And that was that my friend Toby had a flashlight with him. And he's actually the one that started this light show because he shined the light up at it.
Oh, wow.
And I think that triggered the thing.
Now, when he did that, was that a situation of like, hey, man, what are you doing?
Yeah, if I hadn't had a campfire between us, I'd grabbed it out of his hand. But you know what? On the other hand, I mean, I wasn't all that interested either. So,
like you were saying, almost in a sedate state. And once again, just because I have to ask the question, under the influence of any mind-altering substances?
No mushrooms, no nothing.
All right.
We're just, I think we brought 4 cans of beer. And the plan was to bring 10. And,
well, even 10 between 2 people should not be the case if you see in pink elephants. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to know that you had an experience of this proximity, and what I find interesting is, like you said, this feeling of almost malaise that you said you felt, where it was like a dispassionate feeling about it.
Yes.
I think that's really interesting to note, because even whenever you ask people, like for instance, one of the interesting facts about the Apollo astronauts is that they kind of had the same reports whenever they came back from the moon. In the fact that, people were like, well, how'd you feel about doing that? And they're like, I guess I was on the moon. Like, it was cool.
I saw that.
Like, it was cool.
I remember that.
And like I said, when you're over flooded with an experience, when you're over flooded with something, a lot of the reason that I have experiencers on this show, Terry, is because I myself am an experiencer, but in a different way. I've had my experiences with the paranormal, shadow people, ghosts, things like that. I've never had the extraterrestrial or exotic technology experience necessarily. But my experience lies in the realm of the religious, where I had a religious epiphany experience in my life, feeling the true presence of God and feeling him call me. And that's just me. That's what happened. That's how I interpret it. That's the closest I can get to one of the most life-changing moments in my life. Now, granted, I spent a year in the seminary. I did not become a priest. I'm married. I have a kid. Spent years in youth ministry, things like that. But it was a life-stealing experience for me. And I will never deny it happening. I will never deny any of the experiences of the divine that I've had in my life. I will not. much like I'm sure the same way that you will go to your grave saying that this incident at Devil's Den happened with you.
Yes.
Because it happened with you. And
Yes.
That's just me speaking from my own experience offhand. You know, as to why I have guests like you on the show, because there are a lot of people that would be like, yeah, okay, dude, whatever, like, all right. But to call into question somebody's experience, somebody's feelings, the way that something made them feel, and like I said, I can't even quantify in words what happened with me.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and it was, like I said, one of the most life-stealing moments of my life, where I was dedicated to something from that point forward, and will never not be dedicated to it.
That's a great story. I'll tell you, I put a little email address in the back of Devil's Den and said, look, if you've had an experience and you want to tell me about it, I'm not a doctor or a therapist, but I'd love to hear your story.
Yeah.
I wrote the reckoning. I had 1,400 replies.
Yeah. I was going to say, how fast did that crash your email box?
Oh, my God. Every morning, I'd get up, make a pot of coffee, and answer. I answered every single one of them.
But the stories must be amazing, Terry.
Oh, the stories are cool. But I got an email from a woman who had an NDE experience, and we started comparing notes. And she said, have you ever given any thought to the commonality between the NDE experience and the UFO experience? And I said, no, it's never crossed my mind. And we got to talking, and it's very much like it's a life-changing event. Yeah. And I mean, there's a difference between seeing a silver saucer dart across the sky. I mean, that's one level. Yeah. But when you have an encounter with these things at this level of intimacy, you come out of it a changed human being. So much so, I mean, I tend to measure my life in pre-1977 and post-1977. Yeah. You know, we went down there as kids, and I was 22 years old at the time, and we came back adults. So, yeah, I get that. And I think that Bigfoot, ghosts, UFOs, all this stuff has some thread of connection. It goes back to a single source. Sure. And that's kind of cool.
Well, and, to start going a little bit deeper into your case, into your experience here, Terry, let's kind of fast forward back to 2012 now.
Yeah.
When you went to the doctor because of just normal things, as a person is prone to do. And
bare weight on my right leg, man. I had something was wrong with my knee. And I didn't injure it or anything. I mean, I fell when I got up because my knee hurt, but that wasn't the real cause of pain. So I told my wife, I said, I got to go to the hospital. And I get all my care through the VA. So she took me to the VA, and, I waited and saw the very kind physician's assistant, and they wheeled me into the x-ray room and took a couple x-rays. And the tech is kind of like, let me take two more. Shots of my leg from straight on and then with my knee bent, lying flat. And then she says, have you been in an auto accident or had a shrapnel wound or something to account for a piece of wire and metal in your leg? And I said, no.
Yeah. Been around any explosions you don't remember lately?
Yeah, any radios blow up and throw a transistor into your leg? So she said, well, there's some anomalies on your x-ray. And I said, well, cool. Can I see them? And she was kind of hesitant, but then she showed them to me. And as soon as I saw them, it was like a slap in the face for me, because that immediately took me back to 1977 and validated the fact that they had put their hands on me, because I think that's where these things came from.
Now, do you remember? Because I think that may be very much the same way that athletes talk about the slowing of time. Like whenever you're going to swing, like, that's a 95 mile per hour fastball. How are you able to keep your eyes on it so fast? things tend to slow down when you're in that moment. Time seems to suspend. Was this one of those cases where you had missing time, as has been reported with some people, where you come back and, hey, yeah, the car radio was suddenly 3 hours ahead of what it was prior?
Oh, my, yes. And to clear that up, after this light that was scanning our campground, after that turned off, again, like a switch somebody hit, I was just overwhelmed with the feeling that, man, I got to go to sleep. All I wanted to do was go to that tent and go to sleep.
Wow.
And my friend put up and said, show's over. So here we are with this thing, 3,000 feet over our heads, the size of Walmart, and we went to bed. And I was asleep the second my head hit that plastic pillow. And I didn't wake up and we don't know what time, because we both had mechanical watches. We had nice wind-up mechanical watches because, a good watch is integral to the job if you're an EMT. And both of our watches had stopped at 2:40. And sometime in the early morning, and I'm thinking it was probably between 4 and 5, there were these lights, yellow and white and orangey, flashing through the tent and lighting it up, man, like a ballpark at night, right through the canvas. And I woke up and I was confused. I didn't have my wits about me. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, I'm camping with Toby. That's right. And these lights. And I reasoned that these lights must be like the overhead flashing lights of a park ranger's truck there to kick us out of the park, because we knew we were trespassing. But that didn't make sense either, because these lights were not sequenced and they were incredibly bright. And then I looked down and my boots had been unlaced. And that puzzled me because I knew they were laced up. I would never have gone to sleep with my boots unlaced. I mean, they teach you to take care of your feet. I took my combat boot off and my socks were on sideways. And that confused me. So I took them off. I put them on properly. I laced my boots back up. Then I turned my attention to my friend, who's peeking out of the flap of the tent on his side. And in one of these flashes of bright white light, I could see that he had tracks of tears down the right side of his face, because I guess the saline fluoresced in the tears as it dried on his skin. And that scared me. All of that sedated feeling, that was all out the window when I saw that. Now I'm scared. And I'm like, what's out there, Toby? What is it, man? Is it park rangers? What's out there? But anyway, I got to my knees and I looked out my side of the tent. I pulled the flap back like 2 inches and I'm looking. And that thing that was 3,000 feet over our heads when we went to bed had descended. And thank God we were off to the side by the tree line. So it's not directly over us. We're just to the side of it. And it has descended to 30 feet over the top of the meadow. I mean, it's above us as tall as a 3-story building would be. That's it. And it was incredibly intimidating. And the lights are still flashing, multicolored. And the next thing I saw was what I thought to be little kids. And I saw these kids, maybe a dozen or 15. I wish I'd counted them. I didn't. And I couldn't see them real well because they were a fair distance away, but I could see them whenever these lights would flash. I could get a kind of a decent view of them. And I'm like, Toby, man, what are these kids doing out here in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere? And he said, Terry, man, those ain't no little kids. Look at them. They're not human beings. And I looked, and he was right. They're not. They were the grays. They were typical grays. Disproportionately large heads, spindly torso, long limbs, and they walk with a very distinctive gait. They walk like their knees were almost hinged to go backward an inch or two with every step. It was an odd walk. And we were scared to death. We were scared we were going to sneeze or cough or do something to attract their attention. We didn't know it at the time, but they were long done with us.
Yeah.
They were finished with us.
Well, and now you say they were finished with you. At least they were finished with you. In your account of this story, that as you said, spanned between 1977 at the initial occurrence to 2012 and even to now, aftermath-wise. Was that the only encounter that you had? Or were there follow-up encounters from other people, agencies, things like that?
There were some crazy things that happened. That happened in 1977. I had 10 years of peace. And then in 1987, it was beautiful. It was in the fall, like September in Michigan. And my favorite thing to do on Sundays in the fall was to get up 6 a.m., put on some leather, grab my motorcycle, and go out solo for a couple-mile ride for maybe 2 hours, and just enjoy the exhilaration of the speed and the wind. And I just enjoyed it. And I had the oddest experience. I was doing about 85. It was a long flat stretch with nothing there. So I'm doing like 85, faster than I should have been. And a curve is coming up. So I dial it back to about 60, 65. And then in the blink of an eye, I'm doing 30 miles an hour on a gravel road. And I thought, how did that happen? And, I really convinced myself that I was, daydreaming, because I used to use this time to think about, work and stuff to do around the house and plan a vacation and, just time to myself. And I thought, man, I know I'm absent-minded, but this is ridiculous. Because number one, I'd never take my bike on gravel. Never, risk chipping a paint job. Never,
Yeah.
So here I was, and I stopped the bike, and I get off of it, and I got the helmet in my hand, and I'm in the middle of, 1,000 acres of soybeans on either side of me. And I got nothing for a point of reference other than thinking if I turn the bike around and go back, I should get back where I came from. So that's what I did. I turned the bike around. I drove back. Sure enough, I hit the paved road and headed home. I got home, and to my wife, who was hysterical and crying, and I'm 2 hours late. And I thought, that can't be. And I knew from Nickelodeon, I knew from what the kids were watching, I could hear the television. I knew it was noon or after. And I thought, oh my God, I can't account for that time. And, never could account for that time. So yeah, I had that period of missing time. And then, after I published the book, that initiated a series of strange events, including April 2018, a call from Tom DeLonge from, Blink 182 or To the Stars Academy.
Absolutely.
And I got to be honest, I had no idea who he was because realized that before I wrote the book in 2017, I was never familiar with UFO culture. I didn't read UFO books. I didn't see Independence Day till 2012.
You were a little bit busy defending, Constitution and practicing law.
Well, yeah, but I went to movies, but I never liked anything in the sci-fi genre, It disturbed my sleep. So, and where was I here? Oh, yeah, Tom DeLonge calls, right? And he says, "Hi, Terry, this is Tom DeLonge." And I'm like, well, hey, Tom, how you doing? And he says, "I've got Lou Elizondo here and Steve Justice, and we'd like to talk to you. Read your book." And I had no idea who any of these players were.
Wow.
But they introduced themselves, and we had a nice conversation, about an hour and a half. And Lou said he was going to do a visit to Dallas to see me. And there was also going to be a physician fly down and see me. I won't mention his name because he was very kind to me and asked me not to.
Sure.
But he was able to validate for me that these things in my leg, by triangulating, got new x-rays and could triangulate them, and tell the depth that they were, they're actually objects underneath, inside my skin, in my body. And those things below my knee that look like bone, those, right in my calf muscle. When the radiologist showed me those in 2012, he said, well, you got some bones in your leg. And I'm like, well, ain't I supposed to?
I would assume everybody does, doctor.
Yeah, no kidding. and he kind of pops them up, and the guy was kind of in shock. He pops this up on a light box, and he says, you've got this thing in your leg, and it is, based on what I see here, it's the same density as your bone tissue. So it's made from your bone. But he said, I got to be honest, I've never seen bone tissue spontaneously sprout in the middle of a muscle, nor have I ever seen it arrange itself symmetrically.
Well, not just that. If it's the same density as your bone tissue, that means it's been growing forever.
Yeah.
And even the shape of it, to see it, is pretty phenomenal, He
pointed out, if you look at the bone closely, this bone, the fibula, I think, you could see a little bump there where the calcium is building up to try to arch its way toward that piece of bone, he said. And he said, that's an indication that it's been in your body quite a long time. Because I said, is this something that I picked up recently, or has this been here a while? And he says, no, I think this has been in your body for many years.
Yeah. Yeah, so. It's now, let's go back a moment and let's get back to Toby, because Toby is really a through line for quite a bit of this story, not just the incident that night, but for the rest of the incidents throughout your life. He's really a through thread through all of this, correct?
He is, in unexpected ways. When I said that when we left Devil's Den, we were changed. Something had changed between us, and I didn't realize it at the time. But this is kind of a familiar concept. Yeah, those are those things from head on. They're kind of disc shaped. So my I'm in the car with my buddy, and we made an agreement that when we got back, we knew we were going to have to go to the hospital because we knew we were hurt. And we agreed that we would not tell the doctors. Remember, we worked at the hospital, so these were all our friends. Yeah. We weren't going to tell anybody we saw a UFO the size of a Walmart. That would just not have gone over well at all.
You were in the service, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. So, so we just, but we didn't want to lie, and because, the truth is an important thing. And we decided that what we do is we could tell them that we went to bed, we felt bad, we felt weird, we woke up sick as dogs, and we came home. And that's the truth. And, when we left, we ran to the car after this thing lifted off and took off and just got out of there with our lives. I took my wallet and my car keys. We left everything there, our tent, my buddy's backpack, his Coleman cooler, everything we had, we brought down there. We left because we just wanted out. We just wanted to get back to blacktop and lights. Yeah.
Yeah. And
so,
let's start getting into a little bit of Devil's Den: The Reckoning and the later story with Toby.
Yeah, I'd like to share that. Like I said, something had changed in us. We had this brief conversation where we made this pact that we would not speak of the UFO. But other than that, it was a 6.5-hour quiet drive. And now that's contrary to human nature. You got two people that go through an incredible event. Human nature is, you want to debrief. You want to talk to somebody about it. You want to say, hey, did you see what I saw? Yeah, we validate each other's story.
Hey, you'd think you'd do sit around the campfire, chat for a minute, something.
Nothing. We never discussed it.
Wow.
And, I found out that that's not unusual.
Yeah.
In these 1,400 emails that I got from people, I got a whole bunch of them that told me that after an event, the band disrupted. The band broke up. Everybody went in different directions. And if it were family, it was the kind of thing that we all saw it together, but nobody talked about it. And if 20 years later somebody brought it up at Thanksgiving dinner, it was a really uncomfortable moment, and everyone would just I don't remember that. No, I don't remember that at all.
Yeah.
So again, I think it speaks to some kind of influence. But I wanted nothing to do with Toby, and I really couldn't reconcile that emotion, but I didn't. And we were ordered to have no contact with one another. They sent me to work at a supply squadron temporarily while Toby was getting ready to ship out to Japan. And they got him out of there at light speed. I mean, they cut his orders just incredibly fast. So
and that was right after this incident.
It was. As a matter of fact, when they hospitalized us, they put us each in separate rooms. A room for an enlisted man was kind of a perk. I mean, private rooms were reserved for officers or the acutely ill. And we were acutely dehydrated. I don't know if we could characterize ourselves as acutely ill. And we were hurting. I was burned. I had, they called it flash burns. I had burns to the cornea of my eye that like an arc welder would get if they didn't wear that hood.
Sure.
And it's a sunburn to the cornea of your eye, and it's just very painful. And my friend had the same injury. And I was sunburned. I was sunburned under my arms, the soles of my feet, top of my head. I mean everywhere. I was sunburned, and it was the worst sunburn I'd ever had. I never blistered. I never peeled. But it just took a week to go away. So,
wow.
2 nights in the hospital. But interestingly, on my 3rd night in the hospital, my night nurse comes in to give me an injection, right? And medical people take care of their own. They saw to it that I was very comfortable, and I'm very appreciative of that. So she comes in to give me an injection, and 2 guys in blue business suits walk in back of her. And you know where this is going. And, I was a pretty straight kid. I'd never been in trouble with police, never had any interaction with the police to speak of. But these guys were cops. I mean, they stereotype people, but they looked like cops. They walked like cops. I mean, they had that swagger. I mean, they had their suit coats were unbuttoned. I could see shoulder holsters,
Yeah.
So there was one guy about 50 and a younger guy about 30. The older guy was a major. The younger guy was a captain. And the major says, he did all the talking to the nurse, if that's going to sedate Sergeant Lovelace, it's going to have to wait. We have to ask him some questions. And they flash these badges to her. And then he says, and shut the door on your way out. And I thought, whoa, no need to be rude here. And I didn't know it. I mean, years later, I would learn that's kind of a typical interrogation technique to intimidate somebody, get them scared. And boy, they succeeded beyond their wildest. I was scared to death, I got to tell you. So they show me their IDs, and they're from the OSI, the Office of Special Investigations. And the USAF Office of Special Investigations is the investigative branch of their security police.
Yeah.
It's like OSI is to the Air Force what NCIS is to the Navy. So these guys were like all business. And I'm thinking, oh, my God, we burned the forest down. That's all I could think of.
Yeah.
So this major, he says, we talked to the park rangers. They called us. You left all your stuff down there. That means you probably gonna head back. What's this all about? You got a little marijuana plot growing down there? Now that scared me because 1977 as an NCO, if I'd been having marijuana,
oh yeah,
if somebody happenstance had been growing marijuana down there, they could have hung it on us very easily. And I said, no, sir, no. So he did an interrogation thing that was pretty harsh, and I refused to say much of anything. I answered his questions as well as I could without talking about the UFO. And he kind of wraps up, puts his stuff away. The captain leaves, and it's just me and this major. And this major, the head of my bed is right near the door. He puts his left hand against the door so he can feel if somebody's starting to come in. And he bends down next to my ear, and he whispers. And he's got this Alabama accent. I think it's Alabama, Mississippi, kind of like Calvin Parker, that talks like, so he says, son, I know, and you two knuckleheads stumbled onto something out there, and I think you know what I mean. And I was stunned because I had the impression that he knew. And I didn't know how to answer him, so I didn't answer him. And he followed up with, oh, yeah. He says, I know you know what I mean. And I guess because I'd had a reputation as being an amateur photographer, he says, I just want to know how many pictures you took of it. And without thinking, I said, sir, I never took a single picture of it. And he just smiled real broad because without giving it a thought, I just validated whatever suspicions he had.
Sure. You just basically said, yes, I was in the store at midnight.
That's right.
Things like keep your mouth shut as a lawyer would come later in life.
Yes. Learning that you have the right to not say anything, and a lot of times it's the best thing to do. Boy.
Well, and, with that in mind, like you said, it's pretty commonplace for witnesses, things like that, to experience some sort of intimidation, especially witnesses within branches of the military, things like that.
Yeah, well, we're trained to obey superiors, and
sure,
I think that at 22, I didn't have the benefit of life experience. I didn't have the benefit of an education, but I thought intuitively that look, I've not done anything wrong. So if I try to be evasive with these guys, it's going to make me look guilty. That's really not the right attitude to have, but, that was my thought. I think a lot of people feel that way and, say more than they should and get themselves in trouble.
Sure.
But what he was interested in, he says, I want your film. And I didn't take any pictures. You know what's crazy is while we're sitting there watching this thing, Toby has a camera in his backpack a foot away from him. And neither one of us thought to take a picture of this thing. It never crossed our minds.
Yeah, and even to this day, that's one of the things that I bring up to people all the time is, like, in this cell phone day and age, you'd think we'd have pictures all over the place. Man, when you are in that moment, the last thing you're thinking is, hold on a second. Wait. You mind if we take a selfie real quick? Just to, just to blast out to my people. All right. Yeah, snap. Cool. All right. Okay, do whatever you're going to do, man. Do your thing.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. And our good guest and friend of the show, Dr. John Hall, who we spoke about in the beginning, is actually asked on our chat, was there any lab analysis done on the implants? And I'm sure that is one of the many questions that came about to you from Tom DeLonge, Luis Elizondo, and the To the Stars Academy, because that is one of the big things that they have been involved with over the last many years is accruing these metamaterials and other materials. I know that they made a decent size contribution to Linda Moulton Howe and got a piece of material from her that she'd had for years. She's another one that's a dream guest on my list, along with you, my friend. So welcome to the club. Was there any analysis done on that either in 2012 or after? Was it removed from you in 2012 whenever you saw it? Like, hey, what's this springy thing in my leg? Get it out, Doc.
Yeah. When I saw it, the first thing I wanted the things removed. I wanted them out of my body yesterday. Sure. I did not want them there. And so after I recovered, the cause of my knee pain had absolutely nothing to do with these implants. I had what's called a Baker's cyst. It's a benign cyst that you catch. I mean, like you catch a cold. It just, you get it. It's like a little growth underneath your, where your bones come together in your knee, and it makes it painful to walk for about 2 weeks, and it always goes away. It's always benign. So that was the cause of my pain. Nothing to do with these implants. So, but I wanted these things out of my body. So I made an appointment to talk to a VA surgeon. And I took, the surgeon had the x-rays, right? And he's got them up on the view box, and he's like, cool. He's a young guy. He's like, oh, yeah. And I said, Doc, I want these out of my body, but I have to insist on a forensic protocol because I want a chain of custody showing that they passed from your hands to my witness hands or my hands. And he's like, yeah, I know forensic protocol. I took bullets out of people. I know how to do that. I wanted to preserve the integrity of the things. So he says, all you got to do is go get a clearance letter from your cardiologist. He says, I see you got a cardiac history. And I did. I had a heart attack in 2005 with quadruple bypass. I had a pacemaker installed, and then I had a second heart attack in 2011. So I have a serious cardiac history. And I go to see my cardiologist at the VA, and she's like, I won't give you a clearance letter. And I'm like, what do you mean? I want these things out of my leg. And she says, yeah, I know you do. But these things in your leg, by your own admission, are benign. I mean, they're not causing you any problem. She says, I got 50,000 or 500,000, I think she said, vets walking around out there with shrapnel on their leg, from Japan or Vietnam or wherever, and they want it out too. They want it out yesterday too. But, the standard of care in this country is it's a risk-benefit analysis. And is it worth the risk of you having a heart attack by going through the procedure with the anesthesia, which carries risk in and of itself? The risk of a infection, she says, no, in this equation, it doesn't work. So I'm thinking, okay. I'm not going to change your mind. I'll just go see another cardiologist. So I ended up seeing 5 cardiologists and got the same answer 5 times. 5 times. So by 2017, I'm fed up with not getting these things out of my body. And, a friend said, why don't you talk to somebody down in Tijuana? Why don't you just go down there and get it taken out? And I thought, great, good idea. So I made contact with a surgeon in Tijuana in early October 2017, while I was in the middle of writing Devil's Den, and was talking to him about coming down and getting them removed. We hadn't made a date yet, but we were negotiating things. So I explained this in the last chapter in Devil's Den, and I almost didn't include this in the book because it's so hard. It's so hard to believe. And I had a visitor from ET. I got a visit from ET. Third week in October, a Saturday, I don't remember the day, in 2017, I woke up, I opened my eyes, and I'm seated in my living room in my favorite chair, and seated directly across from me is what I first took to be a petite Asian woman, dressed in black. And I had that sensation of calm again. Same stuff I had down at Devil's Den. Whatever they gave me back then, they gave me a dose this time because I've got a stranger in my house seated across from me. I can see the alarm panel to my left. It's set. My cat's chill. She's laying on the couch stretching. So, and I have no fear. And I'm looking at this woman, and the thought crosses my mind, what are you doing in my house? And I heard her in my head with crystal clarity, it's nice to see you again, Terry. And my next thought was, do I know this woman? I wish she'd take those glasses off. Because she had on, I should tell you what she was wearing. She was wearing like a black cotton blouse that had extra long sleeves because she had 4 very long fingers. That's a depiction of her. I don't draw very well, but that's a depiction of her with the sunglasses. Just really no nose to speak of, just a bump maybe in 2 nostrils, no ears that I could see. And she wore, her neck was pencil thin, and she wore like a red handkerchief or something tied around her neck to disguise that, and black slacks like any woman would wear, and sturdy black like nursing shoes with about a 2-inch heel, to compensate for her short stature. And she's sitting there in a relaxed posture. She's not threatening me in any way. And when she takes off the glasses and I look at her face, I felt a familiarity there. And I explain this more in detail, but I felt a fondness for her. I don't mean that in a romantic way. I mean that more like in a maternal way.
As in somebody, like she said, that you had seen before.
Absolutely. And this is a woman, they used to take me when I was 4, 5, and 6, and they would take me to a ship, and there would be other kids there, and we'd play. And it was always the same group of kids, and it wasn't kids from our neighborhood or school. I didn't recognize them from any place. But these kids were always the same group of kids, and we play in this room, and back then I called her Sue, and I called her Sue because there was an Asian woman, a Japanese woman, who'd married a GI post World War II, and she lived in the house in back of us, and she was widowed, and we all the kids in the neighborhood called her Sue, and because this woman had an Asian appearance to her, I called her Sue. That was my name for her, and so did the other kids. It took on. The name stuck. So that's where she got the name Sue. And I realized that I called her Betty when she visited me because she had on this wig, and I wish I could have drawn the wig better. But she had on a wig that kind of mimicked like a 1960s hairstyle.
Yeah, almost a Yoko Ono look.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it was all unkempt and like all in crazy different directions. Like never been combed.
She didn't sound like Yoko, did she?
No, she didn't.
Okay, good. As long as she didn't sound like any of Yoko's music. I'm a musician, and
I had a shot. Wow. But yeah,
incredible stuff when taken artistically.
Yes.
But in all sincerity, Terry, like to have these experiences, as you're saying, to have them throughout your life, were these memories that you recovered through reverse hypnosis, anything like that?
No. And if in Devil's Den, there's a poem I wrote in high school, actually, that tells the story of the monkey men, I called them.
Oh.
And
do you have this poem?
Yeah, I do. If you got a minute,
please
it is kind
recite
of the exercise. I'd love to read it.
I would absolutely love to hear it, as I'm sure my audience would as well.
And I apologize. I can get a little emotional when I read this.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Senior year of high school. This is literature class. I got an A. I mostly got A's. It's called Four Grinning Monkeys. And the backstory is when I was a kid, I had these four they looked just like circus monkeys, appear in my room. And, I'd either scream bloody murder or sometimes I would feel like, yeah, maybe I'll go with them. But it was a heck of a way to spend a childhood, I got to tell you. So here we go. Shadows from the hallway crept into my room, long the monkey men too, I assume. Never before in life had I seen a creature that grinned before I could scream. A candle's flame dances before it grows dim. One monkey man's shadow has slowly crept in on his knees, and with ease. He is perched on the edge of my bed, if you please. The silence was broken 1 inch from my ear as the monkey men whispered, "My boy, I'm right here." Now monkeys were 4 and were masked to deceive children or even grown men, if you please. I started to tremble and covered my head, but monkeys all 4 crept close to my bed. Outside of my covers, 4 pealed with delight. "These monkey men here, will they take me this night?" Faces with grins approached me to say, "Terry, won't you come with us and play? Come with us now, give us your hand, and we'll take you to an unbelievable land. You may not remember the last time or when, but come with us now and you'll see it again." But I said, "I know you are not what you seem, and if you are real, then why can't I scream? This night the monkey men will take me with ease, and I'm but a terrified child, if you please. These things are not men that are born of this earth. Near a star to the west is the place of their birth. It matters not what I do or say. Tonight, like others, they will take me away. Where shall we go? How long must I stay? Tell me, you 4. Tell me now, I do pray." "We're going home, Terry. There's no reason for gloom. See that star over there just east of your moon? We traverse great distance, pick you up, and we're gone to return you to bed before breaks the dawn. We must take from you blood and things we do need. Many entities one day will be born of your seed. When I'm taken away, can my mom hear my calls across all of space, through brick and through walls? Will she think that I'm lost or been seized from my bed? Will she worry I suffer or fear I am dead? She'll cry and sob while we go and play if I don't return before dawn breaks the day. And when I return, will I come back whole? Or will sinister deeds take some terrible toll? We'll soon arrive at a place we do dwell. You'll see it is neither heaven nor hell. A place with 2 suns lights our day. A place that is different, but also the same. The years have passed quickly as life slips my grasp. Pray tell me, why did you hurt me, I ask? From earth you take away women and men to tag us, to track us toward what an end. We are sentient beings that feel self-aware, but you're just monkeys, and monkeys don't care. As a child, I had no voice to say what may come to pass on some future day. I had the need and right to know what was done to me so many years ago. Surely you knew that one day I'd be grown, no longer helpless, no longer alone. Did you not believe that I lived to confess the memories you stole and failed to suppress? So flawed was your sinister plan, ill-conceived, that others first scoffed, but then come to believe. I swear by all that is holy and all that is right, the next time you come to take me at night, when 4 little monkeys crouch near my bed, I'll take my revolver and shoot them all dead. The end.
Wow, man. That is number one. As a poet myself, incredible and stirring. And to know, as you said, that you wrote that as a senior in high school.
Yes.
Absolutely amazing. And as you said, something that you'd obviously been experiencing, Devil's Den and the incident thereof, was quite obviously just a tipping point in life.
It was. It was. You know, and I had a cousin, and I explained this in The Reckoning. I had a cousin who was the same age as I was, and he lived in Arkansas, northern Arkansas, not nowhere near Devil's Den, more towards middle of the state. But he was having a problem. He shared a room with 2 twin brothers, or with twin brothers, and he would wake up at night screaming bloody murder that there were clowns in his room, little 3-foot clowns.
Now, interestingly enough, when I was a child, Terry, one of my first paranormal, and I put the air quotes up because it was something outside of the normal, That's the only way I can define it. I had an experience in this location that we lived. We lived in this little trailer house out in Crosby. Every time we go out to my dad's house, I point out the road. My wife's like, yeah, I know. That's where you and your brother grew up. My brother, to this day, talks about one of the most frightening experiences of his life, where he had a monkey that would appear on the doorknob of the bedroom.
Wow.
That would just smile at him. And it just scared the heck out of him. Swears to this. Now, in the same location, I, being a few years younger, this was something that had apparently happened a few times to him. I myself, my experience was remembering a swing set outside of our window and a visage, a dark figure that I have always akin to the devil beckoning me to come outside.
A shadow person kind of thing, a black entity?
Yeah. And I mean, I guess it's just the feeling of dread that I had. I don't know. It wasn't like devil pitchfork horns, like, side of deviled ham devil. But it was definitely a black entity that had what I would associate to be dark energy, beckoning me to come out. Wow. That moment, kind of like where a vampire is like, hey, open the window, buddy, let's play a game. And it's like, no, don't open the window. Same thing. And I mean, granted, I was like 4 years old. This is one of my earliest memories of life that is visceral with me.
Let me ask you a question, if I could.
Sure.
This is you're 4 years old, and this was maybe a dream, maybe not, but an event in your life lasts probably, 60 seconds or something?
Maybe, if even. One of those moments that, hey, it may have been 15 seconds, it may have been out of the corner of my eye. But to me, it is frozen in eternity.
Yeah. And can you remember the Christmas days or Christmas mornings or birthday parties or vacations or any of that stuff with that kind of clarity?
No.
Yeah.
No. And that's just it. And that's kind of what I'm akinning here, is the fact of, even at that young age, you can have that visceral moment that is a stealing moment in life that you do not forget. And it may be so. I'm of the mind, and this is just me, folks. I don't know if you have seen the show, Terry, about life after death on Netflix. Amazing docuseries. Go check it out, folks.
Yes, Kane is a friend of mine, yes.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. I mean,
we spoke together at Rice University.
Oh, wow. In my hometown. Go Houston. Yeah. And amazing things come out of Rice University. And it's just one of those that when these things happen, they are stealing moments in life for people. There's something that fixes you in a different way. And yeah. And that's what I mean by fixes you. Not that it fixes or cures what ails you, but in the fact of it gives you a different view.
Yes, I see. I agree.
And as someone who experienced these things throughout life, to have it culminate into something like Devil's Den, to have it culminate into what literally became the eventual dissolution of what was a very, very close friendship, all because of the estrangement of emotion due to this shared experience.
I should tell about my experience telling Toby goodbye.
Absolutely. Please, because I think That's right. I've departed the book pretty close to that. I guess a little while after. So, yes.
Yeah,
that is such a poignant, amazing story. So please do let's close the chapter. Not close the chapter, because the chapter on Toby can never be closed. But let's wrap up his narrative real quick in this story of Devil's Den.
Yeah, well, I despite the fact that I was ordered to have no contact with Toby, I really, really, really wanted to say goodbye to the guy. And it was an odd emotion, because I got to tell you, I really, at a visceral level, I wanted nothing to do with the guy. Like I say, I know that's contradictory. I can't account for my emotions, but I felt like I at least deserved to tell him goodbye and wish him well. So we both lived on base in NCO housing. We were both married. So we had that afforded to us. And he only lived a few blocks from me. And we were coming home from the grocery store one day, and I asked my wife, I said, will you please drop me by Toby's house? I just want to run in and tell him goodbye. And she's like, Terry, don't mess with these OSI people, man. They scare me. And I'm like, yeah, they scare me too, but I'll be in there for 3 minutes, and do the civil thing and shake his hand and wish him well. And I was convinced if I could do that I could somehow process all this stuff and get some measure of peace.
Yeah, have, quote, closure, as a psychologist would put it.
Yeah, closure. That's a good word for it. And that's what I was seeking. And so she protested, but she relented. And she was driving. It was her little Carmen Gia. And I hopped out of the car and I ran up the sidewalk. And the door I'd been through 100 times before. And I did what I always did. I knocked 3 times, opened the door, and yelled, hey, guys, it's me. And I stepped in, and his wife walked past me carrying something. They were loading a truck. They were getting ready to move to ship out to Japan. And as she walked by, she glares at me with a hard look and says, you're not supposed to be here. And we were best of friends, 6-7 weeks before, And I said, I know, I understand. I'm not here for a confrontation. I just want to say goodbye to you guys and wish you well. I heard you're going to Japan. And I guess Toby had heard our exchange. He was in the bedroom, which was around the corner, and I'm standing in the hallway. And he walks out from around the corner, and he is a train wreck. Now, this is a guy who was always meticulous about his appearance. His haircut was always within regs. He shined his shoes. His uniform was always crisp and pressed. And me, I was kind of a slob, but he was meticulous about his appearance. Even when if we were playing volleyball, he was. So he comes around the corner and his hair's all sideways. He hasn't shaved. He's got on a dirty T-shirt and blue jeans. He's barefoot. And I'm thinking, well, he's moving. I can cut the guy some slack. He is moving. But I felt nervous. I felt anxiety being there. And I realized that this was not a good idea for some reason. And I said to him, I heard your PCS to Japan. I just wanted to wish you well. And he walked up to me, and I held out my hand, and he held out his hand, and we kind of missed each other and manage this inelegant handshake of sorts. And he's probably a foot in front of me. And he was a short guy. I'm 6 foot. He was maybe 6 inches shorter than me. And he looks up at me, and his eyes are bloodshot like road maps. And I can smell alcohol in his breath. And that shocked me. Because Toby was not a drinker. If we had a barbecue or something, he'd have a beer. If we were playing cards or something, yeah, he'd have a beer, but maybe 2 tops. But
yeah,
he wasn't
even
a drinker.
On a camp out, y'all brought 4 beers amongst you.
Sure. So, but yeah, not a drinker, and certainly not liquor. And this smelled like liquor to me. And when he looks up at me, he said, "It happened, didn't it, Terry?" And I said, yes, my brother, it really happened. You're not losing your mind. And then he said, but why us? And that made me very uncomfortable for some reason. And I broke my gaze. I looked down at my shoes and I said, man, I don't have an expletive clue. And I ran out the door.
Yeah.
And I felt unsettled for a few days. It was not the closure at all that I'd hoped for. It was.
And that was the last time you saw and spoke to Terry.
And that was the last time I saw and spoke to him.
And since then, news of Terry?
Yes, there is news. I explained it in The Reckoning. What happened to Toby was the only contact information I had for him was his dad's phone number in Flint. So sometime after I got out of the military, I called and talked to his dad. His dad said, yeah, Toby doesn't stay here, but he's by now and then. And I got the impression that maybe he was homeless, And I didn't ask about Tammy or the kids, but I just said, would you please take my number and have him call me next time he stops by? And the old gentleman said, yes, I sure will. So 6 months later, it's, Christmas time, Christmas season. So I thought, I haven't heard from Toby. I'm going to ring the old man back and see if I can talk to my friend. Sure enough, I call back, the phone's disconnected.
Oh, man.
So that's a dead end. Then sometime later, a couple years later, my wife gets a call from Tammy, Toby's ex-wife. And she explains to my wife, Sheila, that she and Toby were divorced. She had custody of the children. And she left him. They separated. She flew back from Japan and moved in with her parents. She was originally from the L.A. area, and that's where she was. She had remarried, and she married a long-haul truck driver who was, by chance, taking a load of stuff to to Detroit, and going to drive straight. We lived in Lansing, which, dead center of the state at the Capitol. And my wife says, well, stop by and see us. And she's like, oh, great, I'd love that. We can catch up, and, it will be good to catch up. So they did. They stopped by, and we had dinner, and it was very nice, and she was very kind. She wasn't mad at me anymore. Matter of fact, I asked her, I said, I was kind of worried that you were still mad at me because you seemed so mad at me the day I stopped by the house. And she said, yeah, well, my ex had told me that this camping trip was all your idea. Like, no, that's not correct. It wasn't, I had nothing to do with this idea. This was all in Toby. And she just kind of laughed and said, yeah, I could believe that. And so, her new husband was there, nice guy. So I wanted to ask about Toby, and I did, but I didn't want to ask too much because it was an uncomfortable topic, I could tell. But according to her, Toby had moved back to Flint because he'd been discharged from the military under, it may have been honorable circumstances. I don't know the circumstances of his discharge, but he was discharged from the Air Force, moved back to Flint, and lived with his dad, and they had separated. She was, elsewhere by now. And she said that, Toby developed a fondness for drink, and that was just ruling his life. And what was curious is that I got letters from people, and there's a bunch of them in the back of Devil's Den from people who had an experience and had it affect their sleep. And like I experienced, they came to dread the night, afraid to shut their eyes at night because that's when the monsters come out, And, people have a glass of wine and then it's two, or take a Valium.
Whatever it takes to be able to get a night's sleep.
Whatever it takes to keep the monsters out of your night. Yeah. And I understood that. I mean, I had my own
Sure.
problems that I had to work through.
Yeah.
and finally settled on a 25 milligram tablet of Benadryl a night. It's an antihistamine. It makes me sleepy, and it's not habit forming, although it probably is. But it's not going to hurt me. But it helps me sleep. And
yeah.
So I understood that. She said, Toby would not drink during the day, but in the evening toward bedtime, he would down vodka until he was just hammered. And that's how he went to bed every night.
Yeah.
And so, that'll rob you of REM sleep and, really make you crazy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so sad to hear that about somebody that you've known and cared for and been an intimate part of life with.
Yeah, well, there's one more chapter, and that is that, and I hate to tell this because I get calls from I don't want anyone in law enforcement to take this the wrong way, because I have nothing but respect for law enforcement. I was a prosecutor. I work with you guys. I respect police and what they do every bit. And every FBI agent I've ever known has been a stand-up person and just a cut above. I was working on a case, and I got to know this FBI agent. This is mid-'80s, and we became kind of friends. And on Friday afternoons, evenings after work, we'd sometimes meet at the bar, have a beer, and talk over, the week and laugh. And so I thought, I ought to ask this guy if he can find Toby for me. So I did. One weekend, or Friday night, we're at the bar, and I said, hey, I'm trying to find my buddy I was in the Air Force with. You think you could maybe find him for me? And he said, oh, this is FBI humor, okay? He said, yeah, I can find anybody as long as they're not a fugitive. And I laughed, because that's their job, So FBI humor, I laughed, he laughed. And he said, yeah, he said, do this. He said, write down everything you know about the guy. Absolutely everything you have, pictures you have of him, everything you can tell me about this guy, write down, and I'll see if I can find him for you. I said, cool, I appreciate that very much. Thank you. So I did. And but I didn't see him for the following week, so I dropped it off in a sealed envelope with his name on it at the office. And he called me back about a week and a half later and said, hey, meet me Friday. I got some news about your buddy. I said, super. So he's late getting to the bar, and I can tell when he walked in that something wasn't right. And he came over and he sat down, and he said, I have bad news for you. And I said, why? He says, your friend is dead. And I'm like, dead? How can he be dead? He's a young man. And he says, it was an automobile accident on Highway 94 leading out of Flint. He says, Terry, I'm sorry, but these things happen. We're all human beings. He says, it. These things happen. It's part of life. You're going to have to move on. And I thought, wow.
Yeah.
Well, I did. And, I could have verified that with the Michigan State Police with a phone call. I could have done any number of things to validate that, and I never did. So come 2017, I'm writing this book, and I decide that I want to go maybe visit his gravesite or
validate.
See his obit, yeah. And I found him, and he didn't die until 2007. September 4th, 2007 is the date of demise. So, I'm left with the conclusion the guy lied to me. And I just wonder, in government circles, is there a file still that says keep these two guys apart, because two people telling the same story has a lot more credibility, a lot more veracity than just me telling my story. Yeah. So I don't know, but that's the sad ending of Toby.
And it is an incredible story, Terry, to hear you tell it, to hear you recount it, not only in your words in Devil's Den and The Reckoning, but to hear you recount it here, to hear the emotion behind your voice. Incredible. absolutely incredible. I have a couple of questions because we've, of course, kept you slightly past our typical hour for a first guest. I hope you don't mind.
No.
I knew this was going to happen too. Like I posted today, like, get ready for a lively discussion tonight, folks. You are, as I said, one of those people that, like Sev, like Dr. John Hall, who asked the question earlier, get my fingers tingling with energy whenever I speak with you. Now, a couple of questions before we let you go. Number one, implant. The implant, is it still in you right now?
Let me tell that story real quick. If we got time, I'll try to tell it fast.
No. We have nothing but time, my friend. But
Well,
yes, please do tell. He's going to tell. He's going to tell.
I left off where I had I had an alien woman sitting in my living room in the third week in October 2017, and we're having a telepathic conversation. And it felt as natural as having a verbal conversation with anyone. And as I said, I recognized this woman from my childhood. It was the same woman. And she hadn't aged a day. And the reason I call her Betty in Devil's Den, incident at Devil's Den, is because this wig was on her head kind of askew, and it reminded me of Betty Rubble from the Flintstone cartoons. I know that's crazy.
Yeah.
But she did. She looked like Betty Rubble. And so I named her Betty. I should have just called her Sue because I knew they were one and the same, but I didn't. She told me, I telepathically had the thought, is this about the thing in my leg? And she said, yes, it is. And she says, if you can't have this thing above your knee. She didn't say anything about the things below my knee, but she said, you can't have this thing above your knee removed and investigated by terrestrial scientists. And I thought, well, what's going to happen if I do, you know? And she says, you shouldn't speak about it. And she said, think this, she said, if you continue to write or you intend to speak, and if you have that or attempt to have that removed, my host, Hosts, host, will come and retrieve it from your body in the middle of the night. It'll cause you no pain, but they'll come and take it out of your body.
Has it caused you any pain in your life? I mean, obviously you didn't even know it was there until 2012 from 1977. Possibly even before 77, as far as you know, because you've been having experiences your whole life.
So anyway, that's what she told me. And 3 weeks later, on November 17th, 2017, and I have the x-rays here in my drawer, I woke up and I had a puncture wound on the top of each leg. And the bruising that you see, it's either in the back of the book or it's on my website, one or the other. I got pictures of the top of my leg with terrible bruises that came out. And what's odd is the bruising kind of looks like a floret pattern, like the thing below my knee. Coincidence? I don't know.
Huh.
According to Daryl Sims, he's seen this before, and it's some type of machine that they use when they extract things from your body. And my confusion was, my wounds were at the top of my leg, and this thing was down by my knee.
Yeah.
And my wife pointed out, well, you don't know how far up those wires went. And that's a good point. I didn't have any idea how far up the wires went. So she says, you got to get an x-ray, because I woke up and I got these puncture wounds. And intuitively, I knew that these guys that she referred to as her hosts came and removed these things while I was asleep that night. And so I said, I'm going to find somebody to give me an x-ray. Now, I knew I couldn't walk into a standing radiology clinic and just order an x-ray. You need a prescription.
You need a doctor's order. And
yeah. So I thought, well, where can I go? And I thought, chiropractor. I'll try a chiropractor. They look at 100 x-rays a week. They take x-rays. So first one I went to, and I took with me, I had copies of these x-rays on copy paper. And I rolled them up in a tube, and I had them in my hand. And I went in this chiropractor's office, and I said, yeah, I have some pain above my legs. I'd really like to see the doctor. And I didn't have an appointment. She said, well, try to work you in. So I sat there for like 45 minutes, and they were busy. It was a Saturday. And a guy calls me in and says, well, okay, where do you hurt? I said, up here. And, the usual questions, were you in an automobile accident? No. And I lowered my pants, and the bruising hadn't manifested yet. It was just a puncture wound at the top of both legs. And he said, how did you get those? And I said, well, I'm going to be honest with you, doctor. I think aliens put these things in my leg when I was abducted in 1977 or sometime before. And I was told by an alien that they would come and take them out. And I'm pulling my pants up, and he's got me by the elbow, and he's walking me to the front door, saying, I don't think we're going to be able to help you. And he thinks I'm crazy. But I know chiropractors look at 100 x-rays a week. I know that. And I took this piece of copy paper, and I held it up in front of his face. And I said, would you please look at these? And he stops. And he takes both pieces of paper, and he looks at them. And he says, come on in. So he takes me back, and we go into his office, and he shuts the door. And he sits down. He said, have a seat. And, his phone is ringing. People are knocking at the door. He puts the two pieces of paper in front of me, and he says, tell me the capsule version. Tell me the short version behind these x-rays. And I told him the true story about getting them from the VA in 2012. And he didn't bat an eye. I think he'd either seen this on x-ray before, or this guy may have been an experiencer himself, because he was nothing but kind and nothing but empathetic. And he says,
and from a VA doctor, that's pretty rough. That's pretty hard to find.
This wasn't a VA clinic. This was a standalone guy himself. So, and that was part of the deal. He said, I'll pay for your x-ray. I'll even read it for you. But he said, promise me one thing. Let's make a gentleman's agreement. You won't use my name or the name of my clinic. And I said, absolutely. And he said, look, I don't have x-ray equipment here. It's just an office front. He said, there's a freestanding radiology clinic just down the road. I'll write your script. You go down there, get your x-ray, bring it back, drop it off. You can look at it, bring it back, drop it off, and then I'll get back to you. And I'm like, thank you. Thank you very much. And I was very grateful. So I went and got an x-ray, and I don't know how, that picture right there is very important. I went and got an x-ray, and I could see that the thing above my knee was no longer there. And I knew it was not going to be there. I knew it. They came and they took the thing out. So I'm kind of relieved. And the things below my leg are still intact, and they're still there, by the way, today.
Oh wow, really?
Oh, absolutely. They're still there.
So the rosette pattern, which interestingly enough, especially if you look at this one right here, you can absolutely see the three dimensions of that. It's not like it's something that was popped onto the x-ray in Photoshop. I work in Photoshop regularly. That would be pretty easy to do. This right here, this detailed side view is really the important one, because you can see those overlaid parts right there of the rosette, and see the fact that it is like a three-dimensional object. It's something that's there, not something that's been placed in post.
That's true. And the TTSA guy, doctor, was very kind. As a matter of fact, we got, it's a story I don't want to go into, but there were more images that the VA had that I didn't get. And he was able to get for me.
Oh, I'm sure, because TTSA is now, of course, working in concert with the U.S. government.
Yes.
They secured a contract, I'm sure because of their relationship with Lou Elizondo.
Yes.
You know, I mean, it was kind of funky how that whole thing happened, because he still maintains some clearances with the government, even though he's now a contractor and working with them, and now he's left them. It's this whole crazy thing.
But it makes sense because, you know, you can't FOIA a private company.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
well,
yeah.
and that's what's wild is that this object that is seen here laterally and this here in a different view.
Yes, the one with the posted note.
That is the one that would have run, you know, probably like, you know, like you said, in the meat up above your knee. That's the one that vanished.
The one that looked like a transistor vanished.
Yeah.
So, the chiropractor calls me and says, "Well, did you see your X-ray?" And I said, "Yeah, it looks like they took the thing out." He said, "Yeah, they did. But did you see what they left you?" And I said, "No, I didn't." And he told me where to look, but I didn't have the X-rays then. I had to go back to the office and get them later. But I said, "Well, just tell me where to look." And he says, "You know, right mid-femur, you know, as you have the X-ray and you're looking at it, to your right, you'll see, if you look at it with a bright light, you'll see there are two tiny parallel wires." And his description was about 1 centimeter in length. And that's what you see there. That's what he's pointing to. The arrow's pointing to. If you look at those on X-ray film, you can see very clearly that that's not a scratch. Those are two very fine pieces of wire.
Yeah, that is a dimensional object. That's the only thing that's the only thing that reflects light in an X-ray, is a dimensional and dense object.
And I asked him, I said, "Doc, if these things, you know, are 500 rungs up the evolutionary ladder, how could they be so inept as to leave wire in my leg?" And I thought this was curious. He said, "Well, you got to remember, they don't do anything by accident." He says, "What they did was they probably just gave you an upgrade. That's probably the 2017 model of the one they took out of you. They put it in 1977.
Yeah, precisely. Welcome. Well,
and that's
welcome to your new wearable device instead of the ENIAC over here. You know,
yeah, their technology has to advance too.
Well, and you know, with that in mind, granted, and I don't like painting people into corners. I don't like asking. I mean, granted, we're a show of uncomfortable conversations, Terry. Yes. But what was your initial reaction to your experience working with To the Stars Academy? Good?
Well, Lou Elizondo is an absolute gentleman, and he came and spent 2 days with me. And the reason he spent 2 days with me is another story. My wife and I were being harassed by these military and civilian helicopters. And again, this sounds cliche too, but this is true, that would buzz my house. They would do donuts over my house.
Which you have footage of actively. I
have 168 pictures
of
very different helicopters, 168 logged. And in some of the photos, you can see disc and funny things in back of them. I discovered when I blew them up, I didn't see them at first, but when I blew them up, what I was doing was I was taking pictures of the helicopters to blow them up on a big monitor to try to see if I could get the N number. Because I went to the, being a lawyer, I went to the law.
Yeah, the tail number.
Yeah, it's got to have an alphabetical symbol N, like Nancy, followed by a numerical string that identifies that particular helicopter. And there was nothing on these helicopters. And at the last paragraph of the law, of the code, it says, exception, military and agency vehicles. So,
wow.
These guys, whatever they were unmarked helicopters, so they had to fall within the exemption. Now, I tried to find out, is this like a But they weren't all military helicopters. They were.
Sure.
I have a good friend who
I'm
made
sure
an awesome.
some of them were contractors, various entities.
Yeah, want to participate. Yeah. But some of these guys were military. The helicopters were military. I've got a good friend, Dr. Bruce Solheim, who'd make a great guest. He's a cool guy.
Oh, absolutely.
He's a Fulbright scholar, professor of history at Citrus College in Glendora, California. He's my age. And as I was going through the angst of publishing Devil's Den, expecting a backlash, he was expecting a backlash from the people in academia because he's still teaching, And you know what they did? They thought so highly of the guy. He's teaching a paranormal class now in the evenings. How cool was that?
Wow. Incredible.
So, but anyway, he was a helicopter pilot in the Army before I went to finish college and got his PhD. So I sent him all these pictures and I said, can you identify these for me? He said, oh, sure. No worries. So he identified 3 varieties of helicopters. They were Robertson R-22 and R-44s, 2-seater and 4-seater. There were some, and these were the same helicopters used by Michigan State Police, Airbus, 350 maybe, but made by Airbus. And then there were a variety of different military helicopters. Also, one of the military helicopters had that side door open, like the gunner's door, whatever you call it. And when it made the loop around my house, the guy had this disc-like thing sitting on his lap that looked like maybe a searchlight or something that just wasn't turned on. I don't know what it was. Huh. But I noted that he was wearing a white helmet. He was that close to me. When he flew by, I could see that he was wearing a white helmet. And Bruce said that's very telling because civilian pilots won't wear helmets. They have disdain for them. They think it obscures their vision and it's dangerous. But military pilots, by they're ordered to. They have to. They must wear helmets. So if you see a helicopter pilot and they're wearing a helmet, odds are that they're military.
Interesting.
Yeah, so Lou came to see the helicopters, right? And of course, the day he gets there, he comes in with his camera guy, and we're in the process of moving, because this helicopter thing has really started. What started out as a joke and kind of fun kind of devolved into anxiety, and we wanted peace. We didn't want helicopters anymore. So we sold our house and moved. But Lou gets there, and his cameraman's there, and he wants to film me. He wants to, not for his television show, but just for PTSA's purposes.
Sure, yeah, testimonially.
He comes, and his guy starts filming, and then, and this is so typical. In the middle of filming, his battery drops to 0. And he says, oh, that's weird. He says, I got a 6-pack in the car of batteries. So he runs out, he grabs some batteries, he comes back, pops a fresh battery in. We start the interview again, and then the camera dies, and the battery drains to 0. And he says, that's never happened before. And I'm like, well, welcome to my world.
Want to bet?
I got a television set that turns itself on at 2 a.m., so yeah. So the helicopters did not come, of course, the 2 days that Lou was with me. But he was very kind. And when he was all done, before he was going to go, he bought me dinner at a Tex-Mex place just a couple miles from my home. And when we're coming out, of course, his cameraman was with us, but he didn't have his camera. His camera was locked up in the van. When we're coming out of the restaurant, this is on a main street of Garland, the old downtown section. Here comes a big olive green helicopter going 200 miles an hour, 400 feet off the ground, and flies right over us. And it was just like, yeah, nods his head yes. And so I'm glad he got to see the helicopters. I showed him pictures, but the real thing is better.
Yeah, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Seeing it in real life leaves you stunned, and you really don't know what to say. And oftentimes it can lead to awkward situations in life between the mutual experiencers.
It can. It can.
Just to loop us right back to the beginning of things.
Yes.
And now, as we close things out, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been an incredible conversation. Let everybody know where they can go to get, other than, of course, the Dudes and Beer store, where they can go to get their copy of Devil's Den, as well as Devil's Den: The Reckoning.
Sure. My books are on Amazon. I also go there. They're both up. Devil's Den was number one, and The Reckoning was number one in new releases. So I hit bestseller with that. I think I'm number 5 ranked today under all UFO genre. It's available in Kindle and paperback. And then Devil's Den, Incident at Devil's Den, the blue book, the first book, is available in Kindle, paperback, and then I did a audio book in my own voice, for better or worse. I didn't use a voice artist. I wanted to do it in my own voice.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's available through Amazon or on Audible. Pick up a copy.
Absolutely. Once again, Terry, thank you so much for coming on the show. As I said, you were one of the many people who, for the last couple years, has been on my list of folks to try to get this guy on. And so happy to have you on, and hope to have you on many, many more shows to come. So thank you so much. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said it's thrilling to be here. I thank you. I had a wonderful time, and it was a nice opportunity to share my story with your folks.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Please do hold the line while we close things out. I will be right back with you in just a moment, Terry. While you're online checking everything out by Terry Lovelace, please do tune in next week. Coming up, I will be recording this episode just because of the guest's availability. But we actively have Catherine Chilgen coming on, talking about Shakespeare Suppressed. She has a fantastic website out there. Go look up Shakespeare Suppressed, the uncensored truth about Shakespeare and his works. My God, I have heard this theory for so long. This even goes into some of the stuff with Oak Island, things like that, folks. That is where the theories of some of the works of William Shakespeare not actively being the works of William Shakespeare go to. So we will be talking with author and researcher Catherine Chilgen next week. Stay tuned for that. Many, many more fantastic guests to come. Make sure to go on by the Dudes and Beer podcast website, dudesandbeer.com, and you can get the free app. There it is right there for your Android device. All kinds of good stuff. While you're online doing that, make sure to stop on by HC Universal Network. And because we did not hit it at the beginning, before we go out, we have to make sure to give big shout-outs to our major sponsor and my company, my good friends that I work with as well, podcastcadet.com. Thank you so much for everything that you do to support this show. Check it out, folks, podcastcadet.com. Use code DUDES20. Here it is before we go out. Have you considered starting a podcast? Looking for a way to make your business a voice of authority in an industry? Then Podcast Cadet is the solution for you. Whether starting a podcast for yourself, your brand, business, school, church, or just plain fun, Podcast Cadet is here to help you navigate the waters of the podcast industry. Specializing in one-on-one consultation and training with industry professionals in fields ranging from podcast technology and editing to distribution, monetization, and even social media strategies. Podcast Cadet tailors their services to the specific needs of you and your podcast. Do you already have a podcast and trying to find ways to engage and grow your audience? Sign up for your Podcast Cadet audit today and let us help you explore new and exciting ways to leverage your content and elevate your podcast brand to whole new levels. From consultational workshops to affordable podcast production and maintenance packages, Podcast Cadet is your one-stop shop for everything podcast related on the internet. Visit podcastcadet.com today to sign up for your consultation or training and use code DUDES20 to save 20% off your entire purchase. That website again is podcastcadet.com. Take care, everybody. Until next time. Can't be good. Be good at it. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Dudes and Beer Podcast. To listen to our audio streams or chat with us live, download the official Dudes and Beer app for Android and iDevices, available on Google Play and iTunes markets. For more episodes, content, and information, visit us online at dudesandbeer.com. You can also find our episodes on Breach.tv, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast service. Dudes and Beer is a proud member of the HC Universal Network family of podcasts. For more about our sponsors and other podcasts on this network, visit hcuniversalnetwork.com. Thanks for listening, everybody, and until next time, drink responsibly.